This is the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland, the scene of the 34th Atlantic Coast Conference Basketball Tournament. And our first game today, pitting the #2 North Carolina Tar Heels against the Terrapins of the University of Maryland. When you talk postseason basketball tournaments, this is the affair that all others are held up to in perspective. The ACC was the first conference to institute this postseason bash, and this, Dan Bonner, the 34th annual affair, is going to be another exciting basketball tournament. But it is rare that we come to an ACC and see one team so heavily favored as we do with #2 North Carolina.
That's really true, Bob. North Carolina is not rare that they're the #2 team in the country, but as you mentioned, it would be considered a major upset if they lost not only today against Maryland, but at all throughout this tournament.
The Maryland Terrapins had a tough season. They were 0-14 in league play, but Coach Bob Wade has shown improvement with his basketball team through the month of February.
I think the improvement that Maryland has shown is an indication that even though in terms of wins and losses they've had a tough season, they've had a productive season because they've gotten better. They're led by their great player, Derek Lewis. How often is it that somebody from an 0-14 team makes first team all-conference, and that's what Derek Lewis did. At 6'7", he's tied with David Robinson as the leading shot blocker in the country. So Maryland has some firepower. I just don't know that they have enough this afternoon.
Speaking of all-stars, North Carolina's entire starting lineup would make a pretty good first team. They had two members to make that club, and Kenny Smith and Joe Wolf, and also J.R. Reed will be heard from.
They've got a very deep basketball team. They've got some great athletes on this team. This may be one of Dean Smith's best teams ever.
So it's the Tar Heels of North Carolina against the Maryland Terrapins here at Landover in the Capitol Center as we kick off our coverage of the 34th ACC tournament. Now back to John Song.
But we're overrated if they're picking us. One, I hope we can improve and be one of the top 30 teams in March.
So it will be a national title and take it all home into the pros.
I look at it just like I look at it every year. It's been an enjoyable experience, and I just continue. I hope it continues, and you know, I can probably really express it more like in the end of this end of March.
Everybody, the Tar Heels and the Terps to kick off this 34th annual Atlantic Coast Conference basketball tournament. As you mentioned, North Carolina, #2 in the country with an outstanding record of 27-2. The defeats coming at UCLA and then also at Notre Dame. And with that loss, North Carolina did not have the services of Kenny Smith. The Maryland Terrapins coming in overall 9-16, but winless in league play, 0-14 in the ACC this year. Right now, let's get the starting lineups in today's opening contest. And for those, we go to the public address announcer, Marv Brooks.
Atlantic Coast Conference Tournament. Here are the starting lineups for this afternoon's first game. Starting at forward for the University of Maryland, number 23, 6'6" sophomore from Olar, South Carolina, Dave Dickerson. At forward for North Carolina, number 35, 6'10" senior from Ashley, Pennsylvania, Dave Popson. At forward, number 44, 6'6" freshman from Hyattsville, Maryland, Steve Hood. The other forward for North Carolina, number 24, 6'11" senior from Kohler, Wisconsin, Joe Wolf. Starting at center for Maryland, number 33, 6'7" junior from Temple Hills, Derek Lewis. At center for North Carolina, number 34, 6'9" freshman from Virginia Beach, J.R. Reed. Starting at guard for Maryland, number 21, 6'4" sophomore from Knoxville, Tennessee, John Johnson. At guard for North Carolina, number 14, 6'3" sophomore from Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Jeff Lebo. At the other guard for Maryland, number 11, 6'1" freshman from Hammond, Indiana, Tion McCoy. At guard for North Carolina, number 30, 6'3" senior from Queens, New York, Kenny Smith. The head coach of the Terrapins, Bob Wade. Coach of North Carolina is Dean Smith.
So the stage is set to kick off this ACC tournament. Dan, the keys to winning first for the Maryland Terrapins.
There's no denying that the Maryland Terrapins have a real tough task in front of them. One thing I think they have to do is they've got to have a low-scoring game. North Carolina is just too good and too deep for Maryland to run up and down with them. Second thing, North Carolina is extremely powerful on the boards, and so Maryland, I think, has to prevent second shots. And in the 2 games that North Carolina has lost, in each of those games, they have shot the ball under 50%, and the opponent has shot better than 50%, and I think Maryland is looking at that today. For North Carolina, everybody thinks that they're going to win this one with ease. The Terrapins hope that they're a Titanic looking for an iceberg. But if Carolina is going to win easily today, I think they've got to attack Derek Lewis inside. They certainly have the people to do that, get him in foul trouble. Carolina wants an up-tempo game, and I think the University of North Carolina needs to create some turnovers and turn those into easy baskets.
The fact that North Carolina won so big at the Smith Center 98-65 and Maryland was able to trim that down at College Park, will that give Maryland a source of confidence today?
It should give Maryland some confidence. An important thing for North Carolina, if they get right out and jump on Maryland, then that will serve to diminish the confidence of the Terrapins.
Carolina, the top seed, throwing it away. Deion McCoy picks it up for the Maryland Terrapins.
North Carolina will start into man-to-man defense. You'll see him come out and try to pressure the guards, as Lebo is doing right there against John Johnson.
Dave Dickerson gets it to Steve Hood and back out to McCoy.
Matchup Joe Wolf against Derek Lewis will be an important one for both teams.
As we all know, this is a very young Maryland basketball team. And now we're going to have an offensive foul called against the Maryland Terrapins, and Derek Lewis was backing in trying to get position.
We were just talking about that matchup being a key matchup, and Derek Lewis gets the whistle blown against him as he's battling for position. Good play by Joe Wolf. We'll be calling those 2 guys' numbers an awful lot today.
So the Tar Heels bring it up, and here is Kenny Smith.
Deion McCoy with some full court pressure. Maryland's going to start into man-to-man as well. And here Derek Lewis has his hands full because he's matched up with J.R. Reed. J.R. is very big and very, very active.
Popson inside, kicks it out to Kenny Smith. Still waiting for the first shot of the game, and there it is by Popson. The Dave puts it in, and Carolina draws first blood.
Interestingly enough, David Dickerson left Dave Popson immediately. It appears as if maybe the Maryland strategy is to lay off Popson and help out against Kenny Smith and J.R. Reed.
Steve Hood works against Popson. Here's Dave Dickerson handling the ball. He's picked up by Reed. Inside, Lewis ties the score. Derek, the number 2 scorer in the ACC, at just under 20 points per game, makes it a 2-2 tie. Lebo misfires. Wolf misfires, rather, and Maryland brings it up, and here comes McCoy. Dickerson starts to penetrate. You talked, Dan, about the fact that Maryland is young, but by this time of year, your freshmen become sophomores. They've been through a war called the ACC regular season, and they've got some experience to draw on now.
Good steal by Lebo. That's true, Bob, but this is the ACC tournament, so you got a lot of guys for their first time.
Smith firing long range and missing it. Pops in there to get it.
And so far, the tempo has been very much in the favor of North Carolina. The teams have been running up and down.
Popson firing. And Steve Hood there to get the rebound for the Terps.
Carolina very cold at the outset.
2-2, Maryland to North Carolina.
North Carolina staying in the man-to-man defense.
Deion McCoy guarded by Kenny Smith.
J.R. Reed matched up against Steve Hood. That's a tough matchup outside for Reed. Hood and Reed are probably the 2 best freshmen in the league.
Here's McCoy. Now Johnson. He'll fire. Put it in. Ends up on his back, but Johnson puts in his first field goal of the day, and Maryland takes a 4-2 lead.
Maryland doesn't seem overawed in the least, Bob. They're out doing a pretty nice job.
J.R. Reed lobs it inside to Dave Popson. He'll score, and he's fouled on the play.
Steve Hood got caught flat-footed inside. It was a good pass inside by J.R. Reed. You notice Derek Lewis playing off J.R. Reed, but Maryland doesn't have anybody over to help out until Hood comes over a little bit late. Nice lob pass by J.R. Reed.
First personal on Steve, and Dave Popson trying to polish off a 3-point play. And North Carolina takes a 5-4 lead here, and Popson's done all the scoring. Pressure by North Carolina, and Hood picks up his dribble. Now gets it to McCoy.
Now that's the key right there. John Johnson passed up that shot. He was a little too far away. When you beat the pressure, you've got to get in position to score, and Johnson was too far away. Great steal by Reed.
Reed takes it away, turns it into a 3-on-2. Here's Kenny Smith, and holds up and waits for Joe Wolf. Inside, here's Reed, fouled by Lewis, and that's going to be number 2 on the Temple Hills junior. Derek Lewis picking up 2 quick fouls, and this game is barely 3 minutes old.
And Lewis is the indispensable man out there. He's just behind J.R. Reed. That's a perfect example of North Carolina exerting pressure on a team offensively. They ran down the court very quickly. Maryland wasn't set. That's a big task for Derek Lewis to try to guard J.R.
Scott Williams into the Carolina lineup, replacing Dave Popson. North Carolina leading 5-4 here in the first half. We have 16:35 to go in the opening period.
Now what Maryland is doing is a triangle and 2. They're guarding the guards man-to-man. The inside guys are playing zone. Once again, Carolina misses from the outside.
Deion McCoy gets around Kenny Smith. This is to Lewis. Here's Dickerson. And now Hood from the outside. That's a three-pointer. Steve Hood's first shot of the game is a home run shot, and Maryland takes a 7-5 lead.
And look how quickly North Carolina gets the ball down the court in offensive position.
Williams battling inside with Dickerson, and Dave picking up the personal.
David Dickerson doesn't like the call, but once again, Carolina is down and ready. You see Scott Williams making an aggressive move across the basket, across the lane, and I just don't know that Maryland was set and ready to play.
Team fouls adding up for the Terps. They've got 4, none for North Carolina. Curtis Hunter is in. Reed is out.
It's an example of the depth of North Carolina. They can continue to run those quality players at you. You see the triangle. Dickerson and Hood and Lewis are playing zone.
Joe Wolf with a nice hook shot. His first 2 this afternoon. North Carolina has tied Maryland at 7.
Here's North Carolina is going to set the double team. Here comes Lebo.
McCoy in big trouble. Loses it, and Curtis Hunter picks it up. Scott Williams penetrates and throws it away. So the Tar Heels guilty of a couple of turnovers here early, and a tie game. There's a timeout on the floor. 15:31 to go in the first half. Coming up next, our live coverage of the ACC quarterfinals continues when the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets take on the Cavaliers of Virginia here at the Cap Center in Landover. 15 minutes and 31 seconds remaining in the first half of action of our kickoff game on ESPN's championship week, and what a weekend it will be. Here's the early shooting, and the Terps 3 out of 3.
Maryland's problem is they haven't been able to get the ball up on the board as much as they would like.
And you mentioned earlier about the Carolina press, and token pressure here by Smith and Hunter. It's one thing to beat the pressure, but you have to keep in mind to attack the basket after you beat the pressure.
Absolutely. When you beat that pressure, you've got to be in position to score, because if you don't, then you haven't done anything. So what? Then they get back and set their defense. Unless you score beating the pressure, you haven't accomplished a thing.
John Johnson out front for the Terps to Deion McCoy. We have 15 minutes to go in the first half, and a tie game at 7.
Some pretty good man-to-man defense at the moment by North Carolina. Now Dickerson beat Williams across the lane, but up until that point, Carolina was applying very effective pressure.
Scott Williams picking up the personal, and you watch the Terps pound it inside.
Good cut across the lane by Dickerson. North Carolina has been ignoring him thus far in the game, tending to play off of him, and Williams paid the price for it that time.
Bob Wade, the Terps head coach, watching his counterpart Dean Smith make a change. Dave Popson back into the lineup, but Scott Williams goes out. The Terps played in, looking to take the lead. Derek Lewis.
Carolina zoning the out-of-bounds play.
And they stay zoned with McCoy out front being guarded by Lebo.
So
1-3-1.
1-3-1, and it's really a big 1-3-1 zone with Wolf and Popson and J.R. Reed in there waving their arms around.
Dan, it's one of those things that adds to the Carolina legacy. It's so tough to prepare for this team just on the basis of talent, but then they change defenses every time down the floor, too. Hood scores. He's hit a couple of bombs for 6 points, and Maryland takes a 3-point lead at 10-7.
Steve Hood can really fill it up from that three-point range, and Maryland has done an effective job finding him there today.
Underneath, Popson tried to tip it in. Wolf gets it, scores it. Nope, take it away. Traveling call on Joe Wolf.
Now, Bob Wade had to be concerned about that because Derek Lewis blocks a lot of shots because he goes after just about every shot, and it's possible that that could have been whistled a foul against Lewis, so I'm sure Bob Wade is very relieved. He would not have been having such a pleasant conversation with Tom Frame had that been called a foul against Derek Lewis. Carolina back to the man-to-man, and there's the double team.
Near steal by Ranzino Smith.
John Johnson didn't see Dickerson down along the baseline, and that's the pass he had to make in that particular situation. You've got to beat that double team and make them pay for doing it.
Open shot for Johnson. Dickerson battles Lewis, is fouled by Reed.
Nice play by Dickerson. He just got enough of his hand on the basketball to knock it away from Wolf. Derek Lewis always around the basket. John Johnson is going to let it go from three-point range. And I see Joe Wolf right at the bottom of your screen, and there's Dickerson. Just enough of that ball to tip it to Lewis. J.R. Reed gets called for the foul. Derek Lewis always around that basket and always a threat.
Derek Lewis needed 23 points today to move into the 1,000-point club at the University of Maryland. Looks for his third of the day. Maryland 10, Carolina 7. And one thing, too, Dan, about a tournament, as long as Maryland can stay in the game, they're going to pick up some support from the rest of the crowd.
That's
because
right.
They always love the underdog.
You better believe that everybody in here is not wearing light blue is hoping that Maryland can pull the upset.
Derek Lewis with his third point.
But as much as we talk about upsets occurring in Atlantic Coast Conference tournament play, Bob, the number 8 team has never beaten the number 1 team.
The Terps lead it by 5 here with 13:30 to go in the first half.
Maryland now in a straight zone defense. It's a very active, it's a good zone.
Wolf. A runner is good. Joe's got 4, and it's 12-9. The Maryland lead is 3.
It's a pretty smooth shot for a 6'10 guy.
Almost effortless on the baseline. Here's McCoy, and now to Hood.
There's the pass.
Beautiful to Dickerson. What a pass from Tion McCoy.
Great pass by Tion McCoy. That time, Carolina paid for the double team.
Here come the heels. Popson with a hook, scores it. The Maryland faithful screaming for a foul, but no whistle. Popson has scored 7. And North Carolina has cut the Maryland lead back to 3.
Here comes the double team again.
Nice drive by Johnson, and he scores. As time goes on, Dan, Maryland's starting to find some seams in that Carolina defense. Reed fouled on his way to the goal by Dickerson.
Maryland's finding the seams, Bob, but it's funny. You have a tendency against most teams when you score to relax a little bit. And North Carolina getting down the court, J.R. Reed really has the ability to run the floor. Once again, he's down and he's ready to play offense before Maryland's ready to go. Look at this. Nobody knows Reed's there until it's too late. Dickerson's going to come over and foul him. But North Carolina continues to attack.
Second foul on Dickerson this afternoon, and J.R. Reed is going to the free throw line. 63%er at the line this year, and that one bangs in full.
He must miss all his free throws when somebody else is watching him. He's been very successful from the free throw line every time I've seen him.
Puts that one in. His first 2. Maryland 16, North Carolina 13.
This is a tough matchup for J.R. Reed. Hood can really play guard as well as the inside, and it's going to be hard for Reed to match up outside.
McCoy back out to Hood, now to Johnson. McCoy open out of the corner. Kenny Smith there jumping in to get it.
Once again, Maryland handled the double team well. They just weren't able to convert.
Trailing is Popson.
And once again, North Carolina comes down before Maryland's really ready to play.
So Maryland's lead is a point at 16-15 with 11:45 to play in the first half.
That's got to concern the Terps. They're shooting 75% from the floor, and they're only ahead by 1 point.
Exactly.
I said they had to shoot more than 50%, but this is carrying it a little too far.
Dickerson. Here's Hood, a three-pointer. His third of the game.
Hood had a great three-point game in the final regular season game against Virginia, and he's just picked up where he left off.
Yeah, that's right. He hit 5 against the Cavaliers last Sunday. He's got 3 in the first half, and Maryland leads by 4.
Maryland in the 2-3 zone.
J.R.
Oh, what a rebound by Dickerson.
Had it knocked out of his hands. Maryland ball. And a timeout on the floor. 11 minutes and 12 seconds left to go in the first half. The Maryland Terrapins are leading the North Carolina Tar Heels 19-15 with 11 minutes and 12 seconds left to go in the first half of play. And one of the subtleties that the three-point shot brings to the game, you look at this so far, and the field goal, the total field goals are the same, 7 aside, but there's the difference in three-point shooting. Maryland with 3, North Carolina with none.
And all 3 of those have been made by Steve Hood. He's the only person who's made any three-point shots in this game, and he hadn't missed any. He's 3 of 3. Carolina back to the man-to-man, and here comes the double team. Hood did a nice job getting out of it.
And open is Tion McCoy, and puts it in.
If you can beat the double team and you can hit that open 15-footer, then you've got a chance in a game against North Carolina.
J.R. Reed barrels down the lane, missed the shot, the rebound out to McCoy, stolen by Reed.
Boy, what a player. Take the ball off a guard.
And now an offensive stick back. The first field goal, 4th point of the game for J.R. Reed out of Kempsville High School in Virginia Beach.
And it wouldn't be a bad idea for North Carolina to continue to go inside to Reed and Wolf. All the Maryland inside people are in foul trouble.
There's the steal as they try to pass it diagonally to the corner off the pressure, and North Carolina brings it up.
That's not a good pass.
Ranzino Smith, 3-point attempt. Rebound loose. McCoy's got it. Maryland leads by 4, 21-17. 10-minute mark of the first half.
North Carolina stays in the man-to-man. You can see a subtle little change. Ranzino Smith, a guard, is now playing against Steve Hood, figuring that he can come out and match up against him a little faster.
And Reed has Dickerson inside. There's a foul on Jeff Lebo.
Lebo right in front. Lebo right up against Tion McCoy. Goes and puts his chest right in McCoy's chest. Gets called for the foul, as you could see in that replay, reached across the ball.
Steve Hood plays it in to John Johnson. The team foul so far. Maryland had 4 early in the game.
Good decision by Tion McCoy. He really got in trouble over there in the corner. Maryland Terrapins have to come to that basketball, give him a place to throw the ball.
The shot clock shows 35 seconds. Dan, I glanced up on a moment ago and it showed 44, and I believe that's what brought Tom Frame to the scorer's table. Now things are straight, and the shot clock is at 35, and Maryland gets it in.
I think Dean Smith was trying to make sure they didn't reset the clock, calling a kick. That foul will be against J.R. Reed. It's not a kick unless it's an intentional thing, and with bouncing the ball off a player's foot out of bounds, that doesn't make it a kick.
Here's the pass inside by Steve Hood.
There's 2 fouls on J.R. Reed. He's trying for the steal. That's not a very good foul. I don't think that J.R. really needs to steal the ball out there. Dickerson is not really going to hurt University of North Carolina from the free throw line.
Derek Lewis across to Johnson. His shot banks in. John Johnson has scored 6. The Terrapins continue to shoot the lights out.
That makes them 9 of 11 field goal shooting.
Smith dumping inside. The lay-in is good by Steve Bucknall.
Now Maryland's in that zone defense because both Lewis and Dickerson have 2 fouls, and North Carolina's done a nice job the last couple possessions really attacking the inside.
Hood works on Bucknall. Near steal by Lebo. Lewis way outside, missing it. Jeff coming up to get the rebound.
Lewis has not been very active offensively, and that might have something to do with those 2 fouls.
J.R. Reed just brute force inside, but he missed the follow shot.
J.R. is not gentle when he's inside. I'll tell you what, he cleaned house that time, just put it up a little too hard.
Tion McCoy, 3-pointer, short. The rebound, Dickerson. Reed takes it right away from him.
J.R. certainly involved in the game at this point.
Here is Joe Wolf scoring. Well, you see Reed play with 2 fouls, and you compare that to the way Lewis has played with 2 fouls.
Reed can play that way with 2 fouls because he knows that they have a lot of people on the bench. In fact, Reed just asked to come out of the game.
The Maryland lead is 2. Terps save it. Dickerson with a tightrope act on the sideline.
Maryland needs to play closer to the basket. They can't be playing on the end line and mid-court line.
A little tough to start your offense 45 feet away from the basket. And Lewis is fouled by Joe Wolf.
North Carolina's really trying to deny the passes. Joe Wolf trying to deny the ball into Derek Lewis. McCoy makes a good pass, good entry pass. Lewis does a nice job getting himself in position, but Carolina's really trying to deny those passes.
Time out on the floor. Maryland leading North Carolina by 2. With live coverage of the ACC quarterfinals, our first game features Wake Forest against Clemson, followed by North Carolina State and Duke. Live coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. And stay with us. John Saunders back in our studios will be updating you with other scores and highlights from tournament play around the country today. Here at Landover, Maryland, at the ACC tournament, it's the Maryland Terrapins leading #1 seed and second ranked North Carolina by 2. Now the Terps get it in, and Dickerson out front plays to Tion McCoy.
Carolina continues with that aggressive man-to-man, and there Maryland made the entry pass, but you could see North Carolina really trying to deny the inside passes.
McCoy.
This kind of pressure has to wear you down eventually, Bob, particularly if you're like Maryland and you haven't substituted.
Steve Hood. Shot clock down to 12 seconds. Hood's first miss of the day, and Scott Williams the rebound. Joe Wolf is open. Lewis had it and lost it. Tion McCoy steps into the land of the Giants to pull it out of there.
McCoy playing very aggressively. That's a couple of times now he's picked it up.
Johnson open, and he buries it. John Johnson with 8.
That time Maryland beat North Carolina down the basketball court. Nobody picked up John Johnson. He found himself open at the top of the key. A dribble to the foul line, and he stuck it.
6:35 left in the first half. Maryland continues to lead. It's 25-21.
Maryland back to that triangle and 2 defense where Lewis, Dickerson, Hood play in a triangle. And that's the spot that's going to be open against that kind of a defense. And North Carolina has found some pretty effective holes.
Dave Popson becoming the star of stars. He's got 11 points here to lead all scorers in the game.
Interestingly, Bob, neither Jeff Lebo nor Kenny Smith has scored, so Maryland's cut off the North Carolina guard play to this point.
Johnson looking inside. Dickerson flashing, but he can't get the ball, so Johnson goes baseline and puts it in.
Zeno Smith cannot stand straight up like that.
But he can score at the other end and banks it in.
And Bob Wade is really upset with his team. That's another easy basket for North Carolina because Maryland doesn't get back on defense.
27-25 Terps. 5:40 left in the first half.
Carolina's contesting every single pass.
Here's Lewis. And now Johnson, he's got the hot hand. That was deflected. Picked up inside by Dave Dickerson, and he lays it home. So Dickerson has scored 4. Maryland continues to lead by 4. Wolf inside to Popson. Scores again, and he'll go to the line.
Somebody's really going to have to guard Dave Popson eventually. Popson's just had a super first half. And we're wearing it out, but once again, North Carolina moving. Notice Dave Popson. Nobody is guarding him inside. Maryland still basically setting the defense. Popson's able to maneuver inside. That foul will be against Steve Hood.
Mark Carver coming into the game for the Terps, their first substitute of the afternoon, as Hood goes out, and also Johnson going out of the game. Ivan Powell, number 4, with his back to you there at the line. He has just checked in. Dave Popson trying to complete his second 3-point play of the day. He has scored 13 first half points for North Carolina. Make it 14, and the Tar Heels are within a point at 29-28. And Popson goes to the bench and gets a breather, and a big round of applause from the Tar Heel faithful here at Landover.
That's got to be scary if you're the University of Maryland. You've totally shut off Kenny Smith. You've totally shut off Jeff Lebo. J.R. Reed hasn't hurt you too badly. You've shot almost 90% from the floor, and you're ahead by 1 point.
And so it is against North Carolina. Here's Carver. Long bounce to Powell.
Maryland beat the pressure that time, but they didn't convert, so North Carolina doesn't really lose anything by the pressure.
Derek Lewis going up and backs it in.
Good aggressive move by Lewis.
And here come the Heels. Scott Williams. Tipped by Bucknall, and Dickerson controls the rebound.
That's a pretty strong rebound by Dickerson. He was battling both Bucknall and J.R. Reed. And here's what you're talking about, Bob. The fans are into the game in support of Maryland.
McCoy out front, guarded by Kenny Smith, and here's Powell with it. Lebo has Powell, and Ivan has developed into quite a three-point shooter for the Terps. He certainly came to the Maryland program with that reputation as being a zone buster.
Maryland on this possession has simply passed the ball back outside. They haven't really attacked the basket. There's only 8 seconds left on the shot clock.
Somebody's got to put it up with 5, 4 on the shot clock. McCoy off balance, misses. The rebound to the Terps, and they kick it out to Ivan Powell. Bob Wade wants him to step out and run that offense. Instead, it's Lewis inside, and he is going to be fouled by Scott Williams.
Derek Lewis with a very quick move to the basket. I think took Williams by surprise. Good pass inside by Powell. Now you watch Lewis. He steps one way, then wheels the other way. Williams just couldn't get his feet adjusted quickly enough, and so he got called for the foul. Get another look at it here. Williams has him covered pretty well on the baseline, but what a good play inside by Lewis. That's why he's so effective inside. He's so much quicker usually than the fellows who are guarding him.
A timeout on the floor. 3:48 to first half at Landover. Maryland Terrapins up by 3.
Drugs are great. Drugs make me strong. Drugs make me smart. Drugs make me feel good. Drugs make me cool.
You believe that crap? Huh? You believe all that stuff they're handing you about drugs? You want to believe in something? How about yourself? Don't do drugs.
Brought to you by MTV, RAD, and your local cable system.
Holy cow! The Old Timers are back in St. Petersburg for the 30th annual Old Timers baseball game at Al Lang Field, Friday night, March 6th, all for the benefit of the Little League. Festivities get underway at 5:15 with autographs and auction. Game time is 7 p.m. See your favorite ball players in action once again for a worthy cause. Tickets are available at Al Lang Field.
Coming up at halftime, studio host John Saunders with scores and highlights of other games. Plus, we'll have a feature of the country's top freshmen. J.R. Reed, Grayson Marshall, injured for the Clemson Tigers. He's a question mark today. And we'll recap what's transpired here in the first half. And surprisingly, the Maryland Terrapins continue to lead North Carolina 31-28. Tar Heels come up with the basketball after the Maryland turnover. And Kenny Smith leads them up. Lebo looking for his first points. Rims out a three-pointer. And Bucknall gets it out to Kenny Smith. His three-pointer is good.
And that's the first score for North Carolina's guards, and it's a three-point one that ties the game. North Carolina created that with some pretty good rebounding, getting that second shot. This is Greg Nard with the basketball.
Derek Lewis out from the basket, gets it inside. Carver.
Oh, what a nice step by Bucknall to cut off the baseline.
And the Tar Heels kick it out, and here comes Kenny Smith. Inside to Reed, and stolen by Carver.
Nice play by Carver. He anticipated that pass well. I think he was trying to knock it down. I was actually surprised when he was able to catch the thing.
2:50 left in the first half, and a tie game at 31.
Now, this is an important sequence right here for Maryland. They've got backup guards in the basketball game, so they must continue. Oh my, that could have been 3 fouls on Lewis.
Lewis missing. Rebound, J.R. Reed. Tar Heels run it 3-on-2. Kenny Smith for 3, scoring. J.R. Reed ran over Ivan Powell, and there was not a whistle.
And Ivan Powell's looking around and wants to know what was the number of that truck. I think he knows, but he wants to know how come the officials don't. And Bob Wade calls the timeout, and he's asking Tom Frame about it.
Timeout, Maryland. 2:23 remaining here in the first half. And Bob Wade's Maryland Terrapins have just fallen behind by 3, 34-31.
Here you go. JR's going to take it. Boom. Down goes Ivan Powell. And JR, that was not a love tap. JR hit the guy, and he did a nice job not stepping on his head, I suppose, but he knocked him down for sure.
I don't know how you could miss something like that. This is such a collision.
Nothing worse than those little guys that try to step in front of you while you're running down the court. Ivan Powell's just lucky he didn't get stepped on, as I said. He shouldn't complain that he didn't get a foul call.
Well, as we take a look at Dean Smith from the North Carolina huddle, the last 3 shots for North Carolina have come from the guards. Lebo missed a 3-pointer. Kenny Smith's hit 2 in a row, and I'm wondering if Dean is saying, hey, we've got to get the guards more active in this game.
It's one of those things. I don't know that Dean Smith would say, well, come on, now we got to get the guards in the game. But North Carolina is taking what's available. And they've been trying to punch the ball inside because the inside has been available against Maryland. Also, I think that they're probably trying to play inside because of the inside foul trouble that Maryland has, both Lewis and Dickerson with 2. But if that opportunity's open, the North Carolina guards are among the best in the country. They can fill it up from 3-point range just as easily as anybody else.
2:23 remaining in the first half, with North Carolina jumping out to a 3-point lead on back-to-back 3-pointers by Kenny Smith. It's 34-31.
And here's Tion McCoy in the basketball game. Greg Nard sits down. McCoy's caught his breath, I suppose. He's not going to get many opportunities to do that in this game.
That's for sure. Steve Hood needs somebody to come to the basketball, and it's Dave Dickerson.
And Dickerson came to it very hard and very well. North Carolina may be as good as anyone at stealing that inbounds pass, or at least creating the 5-second violation.
McCoy, they swing it around to Powell.
North Carolina's trying to double team. You can see them running all over the place.
Powell leaving it short. A rebound to Williams. Outlet to Smith. To Kenny Smith. Back to Ranzino. And he misses and he's fouled.
What a pass by Kenny Smith. He showed you some speed that time, getting down the floor along with Ranzino Smith. But here Kenny Smith, that's just a great bounce pass over to Ranzino Smith. Really puts the pressure on Dickerson. And that's now Dickerson's 3rd personal foul.
So Dickerson with 3 and Derek Lewis with 2 for the Terps, and Ranzino Smith will be going to the line. Coming into the ball game for the Terps will be Andre Rees. And Ranzino Smith to the line. Ranzino a 74% foul shooter and missing the first one there.
See Curtis Hunter coming into the ball game for the University of North Carolina. He's going to come in, and Scott Williams is going to go out. And you mentioned the other substitution that just occurred. Andre Reyes coming in for David Dickerson. Reyes is not nearly as strong as David Dickerson. He's not nearly the rebounder that Dickerson is, and Dickerson's been very effective on the boards for Maryland so far.
Ranzino with 3. North Carolina by 4 now at 35-31.
And North Carolina's run off 7 points in a row. They were down 31-28. And they've suddenly hit one of those spurts that they're famous for.
Hood scoots it down the floor to Reyes, and now back out front with it is Steve Hood.
Hood did a nice job keeping control of his dribble when the double team came.
Inside, Derek Lewis powers it in.
Haven't heard too much from Lewis today, but he was active inside. Nice pass.
Curtis Hunter. Rebound to Hood.
Boy, and he got up after that one.
So the Terps have a chance to tie here with a 2-pointer and take a lead with a 3-pointer. And a minute 20 left in the first half.
But Tion McCoy's got to be concerned about the 5-second call. He doesn't want to be dribbling the basketball around.
Steve Hood gets a new 5-second count as he starts his dribble. Now McCoy out front, guarded by Kenny Smith.
Some pretty good defense on the ball by North Carolina. Now Kenny Smith. Just previously you saw Curtis Hunter.
McCoy lost the dribble.
Well, we're talking about defense on the ball. Kenny Smith getting the better of Tion McCoy on that occasion.
The 8th Maryland turnover of the game. 1 minute to play. And North Carolina leading by 2, 35-33. Lebo inside to Popson.
Maryland back in that little triangle and 2.
Dave missing, but comes back to flag down the rebound in front of the Maryland bench.
That may have been slightly out of Popson's range. We're going to get a foul on McCoy, but Popson's got 14 points. He feels like Pistol Pete out there. He's letting it go. Popson runs it down in the corner, and now McCoy, you're always going to get called for a foul when you're directly behind the player and reach around in front.
So the first foul of the day on Tion McCoy, and North Carolina moving into the bonus, and Kenny Smith will come in.
There you get a look at Dave Popson. He's had a great game. That's the kind of a game you always want to have. in the ACC tournament. He's got 14 points.
Kenny Smith puts in the free shot. First team All-ACC, and by Basketball Weekly, a first-team All-America. That announcement being made earlier in the week, and deservedly so. In most people's books, the top point guard in the country. And really, so much attention is drawn to his passing and scoring, but defensively, one of the quickest players in the country.
He is extremely quick. He runs the court very well. He's strong. He just has everything you want in a point guard.
37-33, North Carolina. And here comes the pressure. Derek Lewis clearing to John Johnson.
That really has an effect on you later in the game when you've got to work so hard to do something as mundane as throwing the ball inbounds.
Now Johnson tied up by Lebo. He needs help and finds it in Hood. Now they whip it to Ivan Powell. 18 seconds to play in the half.
And look at where all that went on. It went on way outside, almost at half court.
With 6 seconds. Wolf the rebound. They whip it up to Kenny Smith from midcourt at the buzzer. Too long. And the first half is history. So the Maryland Terrapins have done a whale of a job for 20 minutes. But the North Carolina Tar Heels pull out to a halftime lead of 4, 37-33. Now let's return first half, 23-17. And Dan Bonner, really the gradual accumulative effect of the North Carolina pressure defense, the fact that they're so much bigger and talented than Maryland, finally took its toll. Carolina ran off a 9-2 spurt, and they lead by 4 here at halftime.
I think that your description of the cumulative effect of the North Carolina defense, that's a little hotsy-totsy, but I think it's accurate in this particular situation. Because North Carolina applied pressure the entire first half, and it doesn't work each time they apply it, but I think in the last 6 minutes of the first half, when North Carolina ran off a 12-4 spurt to go ahead at halftime, North Carolina had substituted. They were able to have fresh people in the game, and finally I think they just wore the Terrapins down a little bit. Now Maryland, it's possible that they can come out here in the second half and start very well again, but North Carolina I think has established something in the Maryland minds, and that is that they're going to bring fresh players off the bench and that they are going to eventually make one of those little spurts. So Maryland has a real task ahead of them in the second half.
Dan, you mentioned at halftime, we were chatting here while John was bringing us up to date, the fact that here's Maryland playing perhaps the best first half they've played all season against this type of a talented team, and yet they're 4 points down. That has to bother them in the subconscious.
Maybe it bothers them a little bit. I think they have to be pleased that they're only 4 points down, because the first time they played the University of North Carolina, they were down very far, and they ended up losing by 35 points or something. So Maryland's in good shape. If they have to get back in, they've got to rebound like they did early in the game. They have to avoid the turnovers like they did early in the game, and they have to shoot like they did earlier in the game, and those are not going to be easy tasks.
It's halftime with the North Carolina Tar Heels leading the Maryland Terrapins 30, Carolina 37, Maryland 33. As we get set to start the second half of play here at the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland. There's our halftime score. The Maryland Terrapins in that first half of action leading for most of the period until that late 9-2 North Carolina run to put the Tar Heels up by 4. The leading scorer so far this afternoon for Maryland, John Johnson, hit 5 out of 7 from the floor and scored 10. And Dave Thompson leading the way for North Carolina with 14. And the foul trouble, perhaps the biggest number of all, Derek Lewis with 3 for the Terrapins. Rather 2 fouls for the Terrapins.
You can see that that's the entire starting front line of the University of Maryland, and they simply do not go any deeper than that across the front line. So Maryland's going to have their work cut out for them in the second half. Steve Hood, who's going to inbound the ball to start the second half for Maryland, scored 3 3-point goals very early in the game, had 9 quick points, but then North Carolina put the clamps on him pretty effectively. Maryland did a good job on the boards. They at one time had a 5 or 6 rebound advantage.
There's the points, the way they've been distributed so far in this game. And the Maryland Terrapins have the basketball to start the second half.
Interesting thing about point distribution is Kenny Smith went 16.5 minutes without scoring and then ends up with 8 points in the first half. But Maryland had a significant rebound advantage about halfway through the half, and North Carolina evened that up at halftime. They did a nice job on the offensive boards at the end of the half.
John Johnson out to Hood, and they flip it around to McCoy.
And here we have this man-to-man defense by North Carolina again that has caused Maryland to spend 30 seconds now, the 45-second clock operating out in the old, what they used to call the forecourt area.
Lewis, high back, missing, and J.R. Reed the rebound. Here's Jeff Lebo. Reed pumps it inside to Popson, and Dave has now 16 points in this game. Carolina leading by 6 at 39-33.
Popson showed you some pretty good hands there catching that pass. That was a bullet.
And showing some pretty good hands defensively to knock that one away.
Had some fellas next to us that showed good hands and protected us.
Protected us. Here's John Johnson out to Steve Hood.
Good catch. Now Dave Popson's got 16, Bob, and his career high is 19 points, so he's knocking right at that door.
Steve Hood out front. Here's Dickerson. But Dickerson finally shooting and missing, and Popson clearing for North Carolina. The Tar Heels looking to run that lead up some at 6 now, and Reed misses. JR again, and he's fouled inside. And that's going to be number 3 on Derek Lewis.
I think JR expected Lewis to be there, and he was going up much more aggressively than he had to. But JR does a great job keeping his pivot foot. He's so big in the legs. He's got legs like tree trunks, and he can establish that pivot foot in there against heavy pressure as he did that time. And he's able to get it back up on the board.
The Maryland Terrapins stop the clock with 18:24 to go in the game, and North Carolina leads by 6. Join ESPN for the season premiere of our college baseball series when #1 Texas plays host to Oklahoma Monday, March the 9th. Live coverage begins at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Back to basketball at the Capitol Center in Landover, and North Carolina leading the Maryland Terrapins 39-33. Joe Wolf has it up top, guarded by Derek Lewis.
Well, Maryland's back in that triangle and 2 again. Lewis and Hood and Dickerson playing zone.
Wolf on a runner, and it's good from the baseline. Joe Wolf has scored 8 points, and North Carolina now with an 8-point lead and 18:02 to play.
Joe Wolf is very effective at taking advantage of what's given to him. Maryland has dropped off a couple of times, and Wolf has made a couple of very nice moves to the basket. Again, you see some real good man-to-man pressure against Tion McCoy, and he completes that pass, but it's awfully tough to be trying to complete many passes when you're laying on the ground.
There's a nice backdoor cut to Steve Hood.
That's something I'm sure Maryland discussed at the timeout.
Here's a steal by Hood. Steve going right to the bucket and putting it in.
That shows you the kind of ability that Steve Hood has to get down and get that shot up on the board with good pressure from Kenny Smith. I don't know who Smith thought he was throwing that one to.
41-37. The Carolina lead sliced in half, and Joe Wolf loops it over to Dave Popson.
McCoy and Johnson matched up man-to-man.
Wolf missing, and McCoy rebounding, and the Terps putting a mini run together here.
Good defense out front makes those backdoor plays hard to execute. Maryland did well the last time by throwing the ball into the post and having a backdoor play basically that consisted of 2 passes instead of 1.
Dickerson had it knocked away, and Carolina's got it.
It's J.R. Reed knocking it away again, showing you some real strength inside.
Lebo, 3-pointer.
Those are his first 3 points of the basketball game. Lebo did not score in the first half.
Jeff, a 47%er from 3-point territory. Carolina leading 44-37.
Boy, Kenny Smith is really giving Tion McCoy everything that McCoy wants. Now we got a double team against Johnson, and that's a foul. That's a good call.
Suffocating pressure by North Carolina guards Smith and Lebo.
Now, Maryland just does not react very well to this double team. You notice nobody's coming to help John Johnson. You really get in a bind there. When people are right on top of you, you're worried about that 5-second count. It's very hard to have sufficient discipline to think to bounce the ball off somebody's foot or call a timeout.
Carolina works it up, and here's Kenny Smith, the 10th Maryland turnover of the game. Scott Williams to Wolf. Now to Lebo. He starts to get warmed up. This one bangs off. Wolf the offensive rebound. Kenny Smith for 3. And it's out of bounds to the Maryland Terrapins.
Very interesting sequence. Poor John Johnson was inside, matched up against J.R. Reed, trying to block him out. And J.R. just basically moved him out of the way like John Johnson was a piece of cardboard or something.
44-37, North Carolina. You look at the Terps half-court offense here with Hood getting it inside to Johnson. Reed comes to help. Now it's McCoy out of the corner. And Lebo finally ends up with it.
Good catch by Lebo.
Wolf eyes it, takes it, hits it.
Joe Wolf again. He's open. He just fills it up.
10 for Wolf. 46-37. North Carolina, their biggest lead of the day.
And Maryland is reeling right now, Bob. Maryland really has to do something to get the game back under a little bit of control so they don't get blown out.
Just moments ago, they had a chance to cut it to 2. But Lebo came up with a 3-pointer, and the Tar Heels now stretch that lead out to 9, and rejection by Scott Williams.
Hood may have an advantage out front against Reed, but not in there.
Lebo to Scott Williams, doing it at both ends.
Great pass by Jeff Lebo.
48-37 North Carolina. And now the Maryland Terrapins take a timeout. A North Carolina blitz has turned a 4-point game into an 11-point game. There's Scott Williams with that blocked shot. And to show you the mark, he got back down the floor and laid it in, and a great pass from Lebo to complete the play.
North Carolina's big guys can certainly get up and down the floor. As you get a look at our score there, we mentioned that Maryland's largest lead was at 6 points, and that lead was at 23-17 with 9.5 minutes left in the first half. As you get a look at the field goal shooting there, since that point, North Carolina has been on a couple of spurts, the net result of which they've outscored Maryland 31-14 and really taken control of this basketball game.
McCoy tried to get it off the leg of Kenny Smith, but Smith is there, and Wolf's lob intended for Reed goes out of bounds.
We're just talking about having the presence of mind to bounce it off somebody's foot, but don't have very much luck when somebody's got hands that are quick enough to just pick it up before it goes out of bounds.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
Kenny Smith has had a heck of a defensive game. He's really been in the face of Tion McCoy the whole time.
It sure doesn't grab headlines, Dan, but it sure wins basketball games.
Derek Lewis giving you his Mel Ott imitation out there as he started his drive. I don't know what that was designed to do. It didn't fool anybody.
Here's Dickerson laying it up and all. Gets it back and sticks it in. Dave Dickerson has scored 6. And North Carolina leads 48-39.
That was a big basket by Maryland. Now the Terrapins have to play very tough defensively. They're in the 2-3 zone. Force North Carolina into some tough shots, get the rebounds, and gradually work their way back into this game.
Scott Williams. Nice spin move. Scott with 4. Carolina back on top by 11.
And you have to wonder whether it's the fatigue factor or something else, but in the first half when Maryland played that 2-3 zone, they were very active inside, and it was hard for North Carolina to make those passes. Maryland very passive in the zone that time. Scott Williams, an easy basket. And here's two guys, Joe Wolf and Derek Lewis. We talked about that matchup before the game. Really haven't called Derek Lewis's name too much offensively, so you'd have to say Joe Wolf is doing a heck of a job.
Dickerson is fouled by J.R. Reed on his drive to the basket, and that'll be the 3rd on J.R.
Dickerson, the last 2 possessions for Maryland, is sort of taken over by himself. Good screen by Lewis. Wolf tries to help out, but a very aggressive move to the basket by Dickerson, who's not known for his offensive capability. And that's J.R. Reed who has the seat with 3 personal fouls. But again, J.R. goes out, Popson comes in. Williams goes out, Bucknall comes in. They can just continue to run quality basketball players at you all day long.
They substitute one oak tree for another. Dickerson. And you mentioned his offense, Dan. He has picked up the pace just a bit, double figures in the last 2 regular season games for the Terps. So getting a little more offensive-minded here at the end of the season.
He did not play very much last year, so even though he's a sophomore, this is the first time he's really had a lot of playing time. He's a good athlete.
Dickerson goes 1 for 2 at the line and 7 points. A big weekend of basketball as Lebo hits a three-pointer. He's got 6, and now North Carolina leads it by 13, 53-40.
And Lebo's game, much like Kenny Smith's game, is an indication that North Carolina can bite you in a lot of different ways. Lebo now has 2 three-pointers in the second half, and he didn't even score in the first half.
I think that speaks to the quality of these players, Dan. They let the game come to them. They don't try to force anything. Here's Hood. Driving, scoring. Steve Hood's had a big day with 15.
Boy, he left Bucknall wondering which way did he go. Great drive by Steve Hood.
Johnson knocking it out of bounds. 12-13 left to go in the half here. Carolina leads by 11, 53-42. What's going on elsewhere? We'll check in with John Saunders in Bristol and find out.
We'll go back to North Carolina and Maryland in just a moment at the Capitol Center, but the Big East tournament is underway at Madison Square Garden. Pittsburgh against Seton Hall. Pitt in the white, Seton Hall in the blue. Let's go to Mike Gorman and Bill Raftery. It's the quarterfinals of the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. Bob Rathman and Dan Bonner, we rejoin them at the Cap Center.
Okay, thanks, John. Kenny Smith has hit a three-pointer here to put North Carolina up 58-42. And Dave Dickerson missing that free shot.
And Dickerson back at the free throw line based on another offensive rebound. He has 8 rebounds on the day, 4 of those offensive rebounds. He's really made his presence felt inside.
And it drops for him.
Shooter's touch right there. He used good portion of the rim to get that ball in the basket.
All the iron available. 58-43, North Carolina. Dave Popson puts it in. He's got 18, which is 20 now, and that's a new career high for Dave Popson.
And many people think that among the reasons why North Carolina has such a good team this year is the improvement of Dave Popson. He got stronger, really picked up his game for North Carolina.
The Terrapins attack. They trail by 17. Derek Lewis against Popson. Puts it in. And Dave with a foul.
Nice little backflip almost by Derek Lewis. Popson's in pretty good defensive position here. Here you see Popson on the offensive end.
Oh, what a day he has had. The senior from Ashley, Pennsylvania. And now the junior from Temple Hills, Maryland. Derek Lewis at the line. One throw, and it is good. So 11 for Derek Lewis, and the North Carolina lead is 14. Dan, you've been a North Carolina watcher now over the last decade, and certainly as you were growing up watching Dean Smith's teams, how would you compare this North Carolina team? The reason I ask you, many are saying this is Dean Smith's finest.
Great backdoor pass by J.R. Reed Smith. There's Popson again. Yes!
And they're going to count it, and a foul on Maryland.
Kenny Smith recognizing the open, and no help there for the University of Maryland. Johnson comes. What a shot by Kenny Smith. Everybody standing there watching the ball on the rim except Dave Popson. He's able to sneak by Dickerson, get the ball, and get the foul. This is certainly among the best North Carolina teams that I've seen, Bob. If I had to think of a team right off the top of my head that may be better than this team, it would be that team when Kenny Smith was a freshman, and the team was not as good after Kenny Smith got hurt. But maybe from wire to wire, this is the best team. They've got some great athletes on the team. They've been basically healthy all year except for the game that Kenny Smith missed. There's Dave Popson going out, getting a well-deserved hand. But they've got good athletes on the team. They play very effectively defensively. They've used the three-point shot well. They've got J.R. Reed that really makes them very much better inside.
Maryland attacking and Johnson missing, and there's the aforementioned Reed with a rebound, but he took an extra step on takeoff and turns it over.
Got a tad carried away trying to protect the ball against John Johnson and Andre Reyes, and if those fellas have any brains, when he gets the ball, they will get out of the way.
Steve Hood to play it in for the Terps.
JR not only has all that ability, but once he steps out there on the court, he is all business.
I think it's important, and that fine line between being good and being great. It takes a streak of meanness in you to...
You've got to be mean. Now, that doesn't mean dirty, and I'm not saying that J.R. Reed is.
Oh,
He's
no,
a good,
no.
aggressive, hard player, but you got to have that mean streak. You're absolutely right. That ball's yours and nobody else's.
Derek Lewis, the shot clock melting down to 15. Scott Williams gets it out to Ranzino Smith, and another Carolina rush.
Nice job by Maryland to get back. They stopped the fast break on that occasion.
63-46 North Carolina. 9 minutes remaining in the game.
J.R. Reed and Derek Lewis starting to mix it up a bit. What a catch!
Reed is fouled by Narrett, but what tremendous action by the freshman sensation.
Watch him catch this basketball. He's going the other way. The ball's thrown behind him. He just pulls that in with one hand. What a catch by J.R. Reed.
And J.R. stepping up to the line now, and he'll be shooting 2 shots.
And it's J.R.'s attitude as he misses that free throw, but his aggressiveness, his demeanor on the court, if you will, that might set him apart from other very talented freshmen that have come in the league. Highly regarded freshmen who have come in the league in the past. J.R. may be the best of any of them.
He's got 5 points. 64-46. North Carolina leading in a turnover. Ranzino Smith picks it up, and taking it away is Greg Narrett for Maryland. Williams touched it last. Maryland ball.
Williams would have had that ball easily had not those little guys been in his way. He kept trying to tip it to get it away from the Maryland Terrapins. Eventually knocked it out of bounds. Greg Nard, nice steal, just puts his hands up. The ball goes right in it. Now he's going to make a 1-on-4 move. It's a pretty tough shot, not a very good one, and then Williams comes in, knocks it out of bounds.
Lewis just was sealed to the baseline by Wolf, had nowhere to go. Kenny Smith lays it up and in.
Once again, Joe Wolf doing a nice job inside on Derek Lewis, and even when Maryland was successful early in the first half, they weren't doing it with Derek Lewis. Joe Wolf has shut him off nicely.
Steve Hood scored 17.
That's the guy that Carolina's had a problem with, although you have to wonder how much of a problem they're ahead 18.
Williams stripped away, and Hood comes out of there with it. 8:10 to play. The Carolina lead is 18, 66-48. Graves hits it. Andre's first bucket of the afternoon. Hank Armstrong with a warning to leave the ball alone as soon as it goes through the net.
He's being very emphatic about it. Made sure everybody could hear him, then directed his attention to Derek Lewis. Told him to leave the ball alone.
Here's the turnover story here this afternoon. Maryland with 14, and they trail by 16. 8 minutes remaining.
North Carolina is not going to let up. A lot of teams would figure the game's in the bag and let up, but North Carolina will continue the pressure both offensively and defensively. There's J.R. cleaning house inside, and I think now they got Rays for the foul. He and J.R. banged into one another. J.R. exchanging words with Derek Lewis. J.R.'s not going to shy away from anybody. There he and Rays, you can see right there. They both swung at each other. They got Rays for the foul.
There's a timeout on the floor at the Capitol Center in Landover. With the score, North Carolina 66 and Maryland 50. ESPN's extensive World Cup skiing schedule continues. Saturday marks the 7th with live coverage of the Subaru Americas Downhill. Airtime is 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And on Sunday, March the 8th, we'll bring you live coverage of the Super Giant Slalom. Airtime on Sunday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Bob Rathman, Dan Bonner at the Cap Center in Landover, and the Maryland Terrapins in this ball game in the first half, but the North Carolina Tar Heels, as you would well expect, have turned it on and now lead, and Lebo just lengthened it to 19.
And Carolina was running against the clock with a rule in the ACC about getting back on the court quickly after timeouts. Carolina just got the ball in bounds to beat the buzzer.
Here's Ivan Powell, and Cam, I want you to comment about that new ruling that applies only in the ACC, and that they clock these timeouts, and they're very emphatic about getting the teams back out onto the floor.
Well, at the end of a timeout, a horn sounds at the end of 60 seconds. If it's a TV timeout, Powell launches a three-pointer and hits it, and he's a good three-point shooter. But it's a 60-second period if it's a TV timeout, a 45-second period otherwise. But at the end of that period, a horn sound, and then you have 15 minutes to get the ball in. 15 minutes. It'll take a while that way. 15 seconds to get the ball in play. And if you don't get it in play, then it's a violation on an inbounds play. And if you're trying to get to the free throw line, if you're not on the line in time, then it's a violation.
Lebo. And it's out of bounds. That cost Virginia that game.
North Carolina State was leading Virginia by 1 point at Virginia. And they had a free throw. Vinny Del Negro, one of the best free throw shooters in the ACC, was going to the line for a 1-and-1, and State didn't get back on the court in time. Was called a violation. Virginia made a hoop at the buzzer and won the game.
Traveling violation against Mark Carver.
Now you wonder why Dean Smith has won over 600 games. First of all, he has great talent. He has his teams well prepared, but he's also a great tactician. He's able to identify the problems that his team is having. John Johnson for Maryland had 10 points. He was 5 of 7 at halftime. He hasn't gotten a shot off in the second half.
And right now, leads the cheers from the Maryland bench. North Carolina. Here's Kenny Smith for three. And Derek Lewis the rebound. Up the floor to Ivan Powell. 6 minutes and 5 seconds remaining in our kickoff game here from the ACC in Landover. 69-53 North Carolina. McCoy misses, and Reed the rebound.
Reed really keeps his feet well when he comes down off balance as he did that time.
And that's going to be a foul on J.R. Reed.
Now, Ivan Powell does not know what's good for him and what's bad for him. That's twice now that he's gotten in front of J.R. Reed. Now, here's Ivan. He's got to be frightened that he sees now Reed's in the middle. What are you going to do? Well, he's going to stand there and take it. He's got a lot of courage, I'll say that for him.
At least he went to the payoff window with that one. The last time he took the charge and no whistle was blown. 69-53 North Carolina with 5:50 to play, and there is Mr. Reed with 4 fouls.
Now, all kidding aside, that is a difficult thing to force yourself to do, to stand in there and take a charge in that situation. That's a very good defensive play by Ivan Powell.
Is the first tendency, Dan, to close your eyes?
When Reed's coming, that's the first tendency, last tendency. Close your eyes, hope he doesn't hit you.
Powell. Hood gets it up top to McCoy.
North Carolina now in a 1-3-1 zone.
Long bounce to Ranzino Smith. Out of bounds, last touch by Ranzino.
Good play by Tion McCoy. Ranzino Smith lost the handle. McCoy couldn't control it himself, but was able to bounce it off the legs of Ranzino Smith. There's Dave Popson. He's been the offensive star for North Carolina. Scott Williams sitting there on the bench.
Inside Dickerson. Lewis the offensive stick back for 2. Derek with 13. 69-55 North Carolina. 5 minutes remaining in the game.
Tion McCoy still trying to pressure the ball, and one thing you won't see Maryland do in this situation is quit. They've played very, very aggressively and hard all season long, and these last 5 minutes of their season are not going to be any different, I'm sure.
Thompson.
Terps in a 2-3 zone.
Here's Kenny Smith dishing it out to Wolf. The shot clock down to 13 seconds.
Oh, what a pass.
Oh, Reed held inside. And Derek Lewis picking up another personal foul.
J.R. Reed is an extremely active player inside. There's the pass by Kenny Smith, but J.R. Reed got himself in position with some good movement inside of that zone. Number 4 foul on Derek Lewis, and he has had a tough game all the way around.
It's amazing to me, Dan, to see these Carolina big guys with the ability to receive the basketball so well. Some of those passes are pretty hot, and yet Reed and Wolf and Popson handle it so well in that paint.
North Carolina's inside people are among the most talented in the country, and the thing I think that sets North Carolina apart from some of the other teams in the country is they have a large number of those talented inside people.
4.5 minutes left to play. 71-55 North Carolina.
And here they come with the double teams. is really frustrating. I have been on teams that have been on this end of a North Carolina score, and they just keep coming after you. They don't stop.
Foul. Plays to Hood. Hobson got a fingernail on the ball. Here's Dickerson driving and lays it in.
Once again, Dickerson showing you some offensive quickness, beating J.R. Reed to the basket.
Deflected pass and a timeout on the floor. 3 minutes and 54 seconds left in this quarterfinal game for the ACC tournament at North Carolina. Thanks, John, and don't forget another game coming up here this afternoon as the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets go head-to-head with the Cavaliers of UVA.
Maryland back to the man-to-man. They're out of that 2-3 zone. They're going to try to play aggressively these last couple of minutes, force some turnovers.
Reed puts it up, off. And out of bounds. Last touch there by Lewis, so Carolina maintains possession.
Get a look at Derek Lewis right there as Scott Williams comes in the game. But we mentioned again that North Carolina has done an effective job. Joe Wolf, Dave Popson, J.R. Reed. Rotation system inside basically has really contained Derek Lewis well.
3 minutes and 20 seconds left to play. North Carolina moving on to the semifinals with a record of 28-2. Joe Wolf to Williams. Joe had a notion about taking a three-pointer.
Carolina can afford to take their time, and Joe Wolf can hit those three-pointers.
There it is. Joe's hit 15 for the season and a 58%er from three-point range.
I think the key there is you got to get out and guard Joe Wolf there. That's an easy shot if nobody's guarding you, but it's not a tough shot under defense, as Wolf just demonstrated there by going out to defend against Tion McCoy. Last time these two teams met, Derek Lewis had 26 points and 13 rebounds. Lewis has 13 points today, so North Carolina's figured out how to handle him. Fouls against Tion McCoy.
Carolina making a few more changes here with Ranzino Smith for Jeff Lebo, Steve Bucknall for Dave Popson. And you see Dean Smith.
You got to look a little bit earlier at Coach Bob Wade from the University of Maryland, who's done an outstanding job at Maryland with this team. Even though he's going to finish with 15 ACC losses, his team has played better, I think, than most people thought they possibly could. And he's got some people, you know, he's got Derek Lewis coming back. Lewis has had a great year. He's got some people that he's recruited. Rodney Walker transferring down from Syracuse, and Steve Hood has shown that I think if J.R. Reed wasn't in the league, Steve Hood would win the Rookie of the Year. So they've got some fine players coming back for the University of Maryland.
Just to set it up, there's McCoy. He's a freshman. You mentioned Dan Hood being a freshman. Dickerson and John Johnson, both sophomores. So indeed, some talent and youth on this Maryland team. That certainly the lessons they've learned this year will pay off in big dividends later on. Kenny Smith putting in that free shot, his 14th point of the game, and Carolina now 12 of 14 from the line.
One shot.
With Kenny Smith at the line, we'll be switching back to Bristol here, find out what else is going on in tournament play this afternoon. 15 points for Kenny Smith. Carolina in control. Back to John Saunders.
The North Carolina about to advance against Maryland. Bob Rathman and Dan Bonner standing by with the rest of the second half.
Okay, John, we've got a minute 15 to play here in Landover. North Carolina leading 76-59. Dean Smith beginning to clear his bench, and here's Jeff Denny bringing it up against Nard of Maryland. Ranzino Smith handling the basketball. Derek Lewis hit a basket for the Terps while we were away, and he's up to 15 points this afternoon, but you can put that in the too little, too late department. A minute left, 76-59, North Carolina.
And what North Carolina is going to do now, going to have to start thinking very quickly. You don't have a lot of time after these games. They're going to have to start thinking very quickly about their next opponent, who will be the winner of our second game, Virginia against Georgia Tech.
And that should be a pretty even matchup, at least going in. Both of those teams, you got Virginia 20-game winner and Georgia Tech with 16 wins. And they're fighting for a spot in the NCAA. Whistle.
Going to get a foul against Ranzino Smith as he tries to steal the ball from Derek Lewis. Virginia and Georgia Tech have played twice previously this year, Bob. Virginia winning by 3 points in Atlanta, and then Virginia winning on a last-second shot by 2 points in Charlottesville. So that is an indication that they are fairly evenly matched, and I think it's a game that Georgia Tech really needs desperately to try to get into the NCAA tournament.
Whistle and a foul on the play. And that was against Michael Norwood.
Dean Smith taking the opportunity to clear his bench. Get a look at Coach Smith right there. Let some players have some time in an ACC tournament game. And this fellow going to the line right here for Maryland, we're going to hear a lot more from him at the University of Maryland. He's really one of the very fine freshman players, and he's a class kid, too. Really a very nice young man.
He has scored 18 today and is coming off a 27-point performance against Virginia last Sunday. He and J.R. Reed, the top 2 freshman scorers. And Hood hits them both. 78-61, North Carolina. Pressure by the Turks. With Nard head up on Jeff Denny.
North Carolina just trying to hang on to the basketball.
And Nard reaching in from behind, committing the personal foul. Dan, we come to this point, the tournament week and championship week here on ESPN. And the big talk is who can you pick for your 64 clubs. And obviously out of this league, I think you've got the top 4 for sure going. But you touched on Georgia Tech as a club that really needs to win today against Virginia to keep their hopes alive.
They may not need to win today, Bob. I think it would be better for them if they did. Virginia a couple of years ago, as Denny hits both of those, Virginia a couple of years ago went to the NCAA tournament and advanced to the Final Four after a first-round loss in the ACC tournament that left them at 17-13. If Georgia Tech loses today, that leaves them at 16-12 on the years. Derek Lewis goes out of the game.
Lewis finishing with 15 points today.
And I think that Georgia Tech, whether or not they get in the tournament, as Ranzino Smith commits to foul, may be dependent on how these other conference tournaments turn out. If you've got a lot of upsets, if the top seeds lose, then there may not be any place for Georgia Tech in the NCAA tournament, because the tournament isn't necessarily picking the best 64 teams. They're picking the conference tournament winners and then filling them in with the best other teams. So I think that Georgia Tech has a good shot, whether or not they win today, if all the #1 seeds in these conference tournament wins. But I think that the Yellow Jackets would be well advised to try to get a W today, maybe even 2.
Hood scoring his 20th point. Bob Wade and the Terps will close the books on a 9-17 season.
And obviously Georgia Tech can guarantee themselves a berth in the NCAA tournament if they get 3 wins this weekend.
Coming into the ball game, Phil Nevin, a redshirt freshman. And Dave Dickerson goes out.
And he gets a nice hand, too, because he did have a good game.
80-62, North Carolina leading. And Hood ready again. Ranzino Smith working it up for the Tar Heels. Marty Hensley had it knocked out of his hands. Carolina ball with 21 seconds remaining.
Pretty good play by Greg Nard to get the ball away from Hensley without fouling him. Even though he didn't create the turnover, I think he stopped an easy basket.
There's a foul on Ivan Powell. Dan, you mentioned those tournaments around the country, and here on ESPN, Championship Week continues. We'll keep tabs on the rest of those tournaments. Let you know the winners and losers and how it affects the NCAA field of 64 as Ranzino Smith steps up to the line. Six points for Ranzino. And coming up on Thursday of next week, we'll begin our first round coverage of the NCAA tournament here on ESPN. Branzino with 7. 82-63 North Carolina. The final seconds of this first-round game from Landover, Maryland. Powell. Steve Hood. They keep it alive with 1 second left.
Now
and the Terps have.
That says something about Maryland. There's some pretty hard battling going on in there. 1 second left in the game, down 19.
Powell at the buzzer for 3. Misses it. And the ball game is over. So the North Carolina Tar Heels move on to the semifinals with a win of 82-63 over the Maryland.